Hello, I think we're live. I got to swap this. I also have Ghost. He came up and he's been snuggling with me for like 5 minutes. I have no control over this. Ghost must come up and snuggle and get in the way of stuff. And I'm not the type to shoo him away. So we're just hoping he's not gonna. Are you okay? Are you done? I think he's just going to be exploring. Hello and welcome, and thank you very much for coming in today. So Ghost and I are really happy to show you some of the stuff we got going on. Working on lighting on the diorama. And I even brought in an older diorama here today. This is my Wolfenstein diorama. And what I want to do is I want to show you some of the comparisons between lighting, because lighting is not just illuminating, it's not just throwing some light into your diorama. I think it's really more about accentuating certain things in your diorama so that you can bring the story that you're trying to tell out, right? I mean, it can be effect lighting, it can be mood lighting, it can be all sorts of things. And so we're going to go into that today and how I do it. So thank you very much. I've got Scott is on. Hello, Scott. Thanks very much. Stephen was here. First person in today was Stephen. Thank you very much, Stephen, for coming in. There's Scott. Hello. Hi, Scott. And there's Stephen. Hello. And thank you very much, Stephen. And Stephen is a member. I have members for my channel. So you can be a member and kind of get stuff earlier than other folks. When I release a video, it comes to you first. Daniel is here. Hello, Daniel. Thank you very much for coming in. I really appreciate it. Some of you unfortunately missed Ghost. He was here. It was really cute. But he is in the office as well. So today's lighting is about Dioramo Lighting System. And they're sponsoring the video. And he sponsored the last few of my videos. And the fun part about that is I always wanted to get a sponsor. Number one, that's part of doing this, in the video. I'm a small business owner and I want to sponsor. And this isn't the first person to approach me. It's the first person I said yes to. And I haven't had a bunch of approaches or nothing like that. I don't want to get all big headed about it. But I've had a couple of no thanks. It's just not my thing. And so I want to talk to you about that today. If you're interested in maybe why somebody would take on a sponsor, why if you're doing like something similar to what I'm doing, where you're a creator and you want to get a sponsorship, I'm going to share some of my thoughts about how I thought about this, how I went about it, and then all of the implications that are there. So I thought that might be interesting for some folks. But primarily, we are going to be looking at this. We're going to be talking about the Diorama Lighting System. We're going to be talking about I'm going to go over here and move a slide. We're going to be talking about Barrett's basement, because I did do quite a bit of work there this week. And then there's that choosing a collaborator sponsor thing. That's going to come later on. So my whole diorama, what we're talking about, this is a D&D diorama. It's on the left there. It's all been inspired by my favorite fantasy book artist, which is Raymond Feist. Started reading his books in the 80s when I was in my 20s. And I absolutely loved it. This is a story that I've carried around in my head. And I've said that a few times. It's a story that I'm so familiar with, and I've reread the book and I've read other books written by him in the same world. And I just really enjoy it. It's kind of an escapist place for me to go. It's a fantasy world. There's dragons and knights and battles and, that adventuring stuff and magicians, as you might imagine from the name. But it's been just this wonderful place over the years that I can think of, and it's a fantasy. Well, when you have something like that you have such a close association to, and then get to realize it in a diorama, I think there's something really magical in that. For me, at least. I'm giving you my opinion, of course. So for me, it really is a magical thing, because nobody has influenced these images other than how it's been read. Certainly the book covers have, there's some wonderful book covers that have come out over the ages. Um, Rise of a Merchant Prince, that is actually the book that's probably more closely tied to the diorama that I'm building. But it's just this whole world I'm able to physically create and then explore. So I'm having a blast. I started this in May of this year, and I think it's come along pretty good. The step that I'm at now, the literal process that I'm going through right now is figuring out how to finish it. Right? I mean, I've done a lot of details and stuff like that. I've done a lot of the big construction, but I think finishing your detail really starts at about the midway point of the build, or maybe at the 2/3 point of the build or something like that. That's when you start your finish, because I have to start thinking about things all the way at the finish and how what I'm doing right now is going to relate to that. Certainly the whole diorama is in that thought process, but when I get about halfway point, I have to really start thinking down. I'm not trying to expand so much. I might expand something. By expand meaning adding a new element, adding a new something. But I'm kind of done with that. I think I've got it. And so at this point, I'm thinking about lighting. I'm thinking about putting details in it. I'm thinking about the presentation, doing final painting, those kind of activities. And why lighting is so important to that, and we're going to get into this a lot more even later on, is because you're not just illuminating, as I said really early on, you're not just illuminating when you add light to your diorama. You add lighting to first illuminate, let people see, but secondly, you want to think about where the light is shining, how you place the light, where you place the light, the angle of it, all of those things can influence what somebody sees in there. If I've got a primarily dark room and then I've got a light way in the back, kind of like I did here, it draws your eye into the scene. It draws you to the back of the scenery. It's just something that happens. And so that's the kind of thing that I think about in placing lights. And so I've got some really fun and easy things to show you about how to do that and where to place your lights. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. Hey, First Last is here. Hello. Thank you very much for coming in. I really appreciate it. Glad I can make it for this. The lighting I'm interested in, and definitely interested in your take on sponsorship. Thanks very much. And I'm really happy about that because, yeah, I really want to be careful. You know, I've been online now for about 4 years. And prior to that, I worked in business. I worked in manufacturing. I worked in software. But even the software company that I worked for was software for manufacturing. And when I worked for the software company, the last parts that I worked there, I was there for 23 years. So the last 15, 20 years, whatever, I was very highly involved with sales and account management and things like that. So the impression that I got from that is I can sell something to one of my customers, but if I sell them something that they really don't need, it's the last thing I'm going to sell them. If I gain someone's trust enough that they trust me to make a physical purchase for something, and then they don't like it, unfortunately, I've lost their trust. So yeah, it's really important. I mean, I've gone through that in professional life. And so when I made this decision, when I finally went with this collaborator was the first request, sponsor came later. Yeah, there were a few things, and I'm going to go through them. I've even written them down. And so I'll show you and share those with you later. And I think it's pretty interesting. And I think it's something, even if you're not going to actively look at a sponsorship and stuff like that, I think it's nice to know. I've appreciated it. I think it's nice to know the person that you're interested in watching and listening to and collaborating with online. I think it's nice to know if they are interested in that. If they're going to benefit from it, is it a truly collaborative effort? Is it one-sided? You know what I mean? It needs to really fit. So we'll talk all about that later. Jacob is here. Hello, Jacob. Thanks very much. Good afternoon, Bill, and everybody. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. And wonderful. Thank you very much for coming in. So the first thing I want to do is update you on, just working on the diorama. So let's do that real quick. I'll go back over here to my slides. And there is Barrett's Coffee House, the D&D diorama. And there is the full diorama, 44 inches tall. This thing is huge, and it's going to get much bigger. So here's Barrett's basement. So last week, I started working on a little bit of food stuff. These are some crates. And I think I even mentioned in the live stream, and then I couldn't find these, but I use mustard seeds and this is kind of like 1/35 scale, but I think it's going to work fine for this because I'm all over the place with the scale of this diorama. But mustard seeds, they're a spice. You can get them in the grocery store, and it's literally what mustard's made out of. They're very, very round, but they also kind of have the shape of maybe a peach or an apple or something like that, an orange. And so I like using those when I'm doing something like this, like produce. So I had some containers. This is Value Gear, but I have a couple of open containers that didn't have something already in them. And so I filled them with these mustard seeds. I then, put a little bit of very thin glue in there, and that glued them in. And then I just base coated them with the same base coat that I've done with everything else. And then I said, I'm going to make apples. Here I'm making like squash and all kinds of different vegetables. And we're going to come back to those because how they're placed in the basement is important. And we're going to see that real quick. Here are the barrels. So I finished painting the barrels, and I started doing a little bit of light weathering on the barrels. Now, by light weathering, what I mean here is I just took like it's yellow. It's like a dark yellow, desert yellow, and I used it as dust, and I dry brushed them. And I liked the effect because they had a lot of color in them, but I wanted them to look like, they've been moved, they've been transported, they've been brought in here and set up. Over there are some crates. We're going to look at those a little bit more too. Those are also Value Gear. I wanted those crates there because they are covering something. I've shown this in videos earlier, but these crates are meant to cover an opening. And so we'll see that a little bit later on. Here is a little wooden shelf. I made it out of walnut. And this little shelf is just to put this produce on after I get it in there. This is those same mustard seeds getting some paint. And here's that shelf and how it looks and how it's going to go in the diorama. The other thing is everything on here is glued together. I was very careful in gluing this, so that it was a cohesive piece. I think that's one of the things that's important. I like having these things in the diorama so that, they have their, their own individual look and stuff like that. But I'm thinking about a game here. You're going to be playing a D&D game in this. And if for some reason the dungeon master wants to move it, they can take this and place it anywhere in there along the wall, even behind some barrels. But I am going to put things in there so they can be moved around. And Value Gear is great for this. Now, when you're gluing this stuff together, some of these glue points on here are pretty small, I guess. So what I did was, and there's another thing that you can do if this isn't enough. But what I did was I went to the back, I went to the bottom side of it, kind of flooded the area with CA, and then hit it with accelerator real quick. It really stops it. It leaves all there. It leaves all the glue there. It's not something you want to see. It's ugly, but it's going to give a lot more strength to this thing. I'm not going to drop it on the ground. I hope not. but it's going to hold together through handling and moving and stuff like that. If that's not enough, if you really want to glue this sucker together, then what you do is prior to doing the CA glue, use a little bit of baking soda. So baking soda with and you combine the CA glue with it, bang, it just goes rock solid just that quick. So that powder becomes structure and good structure. It's not just like glue. So that's one thing that you can do. Now be careful because when you do that, it doesn't come off and it's rock hard. So if you want to take it off there, you've got to go in with a file and sanding or cutting and all kinds of stuff. So, but that is a great method for doing it. I in the video that I'm producing for tomorrow, that'll drop tomorrow, it's all about light fixtures, not just lighting like I'm doing here, but building your own light fixtures. That drops. Is that tomorrow? No, I'm sorry. That's next weekend. That video drops, but I show that process in there. So that's next weekend. I'm very, very sorry to lead you astray. Tomorrow is going to be more on the diorama system that we're talking about today. So that's what I am doing with that kind of stuff. And it just makes it nice in your model. This is a different type of barrel. So along with these really nice, these are mini art barrels, and I really do love them. They're really nice barrels. They look just like a barrel you'd think. Well, I also bought some 3D printed barrels. This one's just monster. It's too big, but it'd be great for other stuff. And so it came in 3 different sizes, and these are 3D printed. I really like the 3D print. The guy did a great job. I do have his link, and I'll try to get that in the notes of this or the description. But they're a little bit more gamish. You know what I mean? Like for playing a game, there. If you look at this picture again, you'll see there's a lot more. There's a lot deeper kind of creases and things like that in the molding. So again, a little bit more gamish, but I really like it. So I cut it in half. And what I'm doing with it is I'm going to have it as a mop bucket. And so, I did a little bit of detailing to it and, make sure those wooden staves were kind of sticking up at varying angles. And so I'll have a little mop bucket in there. And I think it'll look nice. So here's what it looks now with those things in it. And I'm not going to go too heavy. Remember, this is supposed to be a game. I'm supposed to be able to move around in here. So I don't want to just clog it up like I kind of typically do with my dioramas. I want to be able to put stuff in there so I can still move around in here with game pieces and things like that. All of this stuff is movable. It's glued together, but it's not glued down. Here, I've got 5 of those barrels lined up. I love the look of them. Here's some empty barrels. I drilled out the bung. I did a little bit more painting around them. This is glued into a stack as well. So all these are glued together. And then there's your top look. And I love the look of this. And it's about to look a lot better because when I put the lights in here, it looks inviting. These are those crates that I talked about. They are covering an entrance to the floor below, the level below. And then there is the produce back there in the corner. And, look, I wanted this to look like the stuff is being brought in. It's a restaurant upstairs. I worked in restaurants as a kid. So, you bring in your produce and you stack it up and then somebody will also come in and take it and stuff like that. So I'm just looking like all the stuff that's down here, because it's a storage facility, is just been brought in off a truck and put down. That's the look that I wanted. So that's what we got there. And then I just wanted you to get a closer look at it. This is what it looks like with the lights. And I got to tell you, with the lights, with the beams, with, everything in there, it looks really, really okay. I don't want to sound dumb or I don't know how to express it, but it's like me saying I really like it and I built it. It seems a little bit, I don't know, self-aggrandizing or something like that. But I'm just giving my honest opinion. I think it looks awesome. I really, really like the look of this. I love the look of this room. I'm looking into it, and I take a lot of my imagery from, video games and stuff like that. And it reminds me of a place you just walk into from a video game. And I just love it. The lighting is fantastic. I've got those 2 sticky lights back there from Dioramo. They just went right on the beams. I didn't have to do anything. It was just really, really simple. And from all angles, it just looks great. And I've only got 2 lights in there. Here's straight on. So I really am happy with that. And I just love getting all these little angle shots in there because I think it's just a fun little area. So that is, kind of my update on the basement and the work I did. And then I kind of went into, or then I started concentrating on the lighting. So I want to look at some comments real quick and then we'll come back. And we got Jacob, and then that's exactly very clever for produce. Yeah, isn't that fun? I don't know where I thought of it. I mean, I'm the cook in the family, and so I think I just probably saw him at one point. But I heard of other people using spices. I heard of other stuff. My friend John Robeck was using parsley, I think, on a tree, and I tried this, and I'm like, wow, those are just great. And they take the paint very well. Don't leave the mustard seed wet. The mustard seed has a husk on it. And if you wet it, the husk on that little mustard seed will flake off. It'll slough away. And so if you paint it, don't gob a lot of paint on it or something like that, because that'll make it separate. So you don't want that. So just be cautious of that. But I love them. They work great. I've used them a bunch of times. Hey, Dioramo is actually here. Hello, everyone. Fantastic tips, Bill. I've heard half of the world's problems can be solved with CA Kicker. You're exactly correct. It's that and duct tape. That'll do it. Thanks very much for coming on. Shane, hello, Bill. Finally made it again. That's wonderful, Shane. Shane can't always make it because of work and stuff like that, but it's really great when you can. So thanks very much, Shane, for coming on. Homefront Forge, hello. I don't remember if you addressed this, but have the seeds ever attracted mice? No. But that is a really good point. And I've gone into this in the past. When you're using a natural element, like let's say you go out and get a stick or something outside, it's quite possible that you can bring in mites, you can bring in bugs, you can bring in termites, for criminy sakes, how big it is, whatever. You can bring things in. So I do take these steps, because I do it. You do take these steps pretty seriously. Number one, you can put it in a microwave, zap it. You can freeze it. You can put it in glycerin. You can do a lot of things to that. You let it dry naturally. You can bury it in salt. You can do a lot of things to try and ensure that you don't have anything living in that. Roast it in the oven for 20 minutes at 200 degrees. It's not going to damage the thing that you do, but it's going to kill off any animal life that's in there. You can probably go up to 225 degrees, 212 is boiling, of course. So, the whole point is you have to take some pretty good precautions to not let that happen. Because if you just put something in your diorama, it's not coated. These were coated with CA glue. It's not got any varnish on it. It's just raw. It's possibly got some moisture in it. Whatever the case may be, might not get mice, but it could get mites and just microscopic stuff into your diorama that will literally eat it from the inside out, because they're going to go for anything that they can eat, and that's going to be any kind of plant life or something like that. So yeah, be very careful. If you want more information on it, just DM me and direct message me, and I can tell you more. But basically, that's kind of what I do. I roast it, or I put it in glycerin or whatever, microwave it, all that kind of stuff. You got to be careful with microwaving stuff. If you microwave something that is wet, or possibly even a rock, there's a little tiny pebble in it, you're not careful, and there's moisture inside that rock, it could explode inside your microwave. I have a microwave in the shop. I have like a little kitchenette over here. It's awesome. I have coffee and tea and blah, blah, blah. But if you take just a regular stick and it's got a fair amount of moisture in it and you stick it in the microwave, that water in there is going to expand. And that expanding water can expand your wood. If you put like a piece of wood in your microwave for too long and there's no water, it can catch fire. It's exciting molecules. Those molecules don't have a lot of water in them, but it'll excite the molecules of the wood and it'll start to burn. So be super careful. But yeah, if you're interested in that, I can help you more. I've done a fair amount of it. Howdy, hey, Greg, how's it going? Greg was on earlier. I saw you're in the comments. Thank you very much for coming in. That's wonderful. Model railroader here. Greg had a nice comment. He's been working on a model railroad layout for over 20 years in a 30 by 30 shop. I'm sorry, it's a 30 by 30 layout. We need to know more, Greg. So Greg is brand new and I really want to see this layout. And so hopefully we can communicate more, and maybe have you in the live stream, because I love showing stuff from model railroading and other people's projects. I've said this before, and I said it on the email or the comment back to Greg this morning. I am of the belief that most everything that's in diorama building came from model railroading, because model railroading has been around for eons. And the wood tricks that I do using the vinegar, how to use balsa, just miniaturizing things, rusts, and all these things, I really see that having its origins in model railroading. So love to see that. Thanks very much for coming on, Greg. That's wonderful. Shane, as always, Bill, looks like you could step right into it. Thanks very much. And that's what I'm hoping for. I love that idea, because in my dioramas, I talk about this, and it's not to be trippy or anything like that, but I love to walk around in my dioramas. I really honestly do. I imagine myself that size, 52 millimeters or whatever, walking around in there. And this is important in this step, because when you're adding your details into the room that you're in, my biggest, I guess, tip or advice would be simply imagine yourself in the room. The room has a purpose. In this instance, it's a storage room. So imagine yourself in a storage room and you're putting away produce. You're just like I can remember, because I was 13, 14, 15 years old working in restaurants, in junior high and high school and stuff. And stuff would come in, and I'm the youngest kid in the restaurant. I got to unload and stack the produce. So when I'm in my diorama, I'm literally that big, and I got these boxes of produce, and there's a shelf over there, and I'm going to put the produce on the shelf. That's it. And I do that with all of my dioramas. Now, sometimes, like in Wolfenstein, I'm a mad scientist, and I'm making super soldiers out of cadavers and mummies. I mean, that's the kind of thing that I think, number one, is really fun to imagine yourself. And you don't have to identify. It's not like you have to say, well, I am a mad scientist. Well, of course not. But you can objectively say, what would a mad scientist do in here? What would this person add? And that is just such a fun thing to do. I mean, I'm really trying to make a neat diorama. I'm also playing. I can't avoid it. I'm honestly playing in here. I mean, it's fun. And so people, I had some neat comments this week on people making comments on the video stuff. It says, he's so happy, and because I am. Look what I'm doing. I'm making dioramas, and this is my job. This is what I do. It is a joyous thing. So if you want to do something like that, you've always thought about it, this is the channel for you, because I want people to do this some more. And I really enjoy it. So anyway, sometimes I go off on these weird tangents, but thank you, Shane. That's wonderful. Thomas Keith Jones looks good, brother. Thank you, Thomas Keith. That's really, really cool. I believe you're new. I don't believe I've seen you before, but welcome and thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Greg says, would love to share pictures. Email. Yeah, so I will give you some instructions. I have a Patreon site, and you don't have to pay for Patreon. But if you go to my Patreon site, then we can email back and forth, and then we can get some pictures up there, and then I can bring them here. So that would be great. Thanks very much, Greg. And I've got a what is it called? It's a Discord server. I'm really up on the technology, but I've got a Discord server and you can post things there too. And it's really, really fun. So yeah, we will work that out. Do you give me a mad scientist vibe? I think I do. A friend of mine does kind of call me a mad scientist, and it's kind of fun. I love it. Master Crafter. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. The man. Well, I don't know. See, that's the thing. I think that for me, when I build, I really think it's the coolest thing ever. Just I do. But I learned a long, long time ago that I don't really expect others to think that. I'm not disappointed if people don't like it. I'm not disappointed if they, you know what I mean? And so with that kind of an attitude, it's kind of helped me maybe stay humble about stuff, and me maybe saying that makes me sound like an ass, maybe. I don't know. But I really just enjoy it. And I think it's the coolest thing to do. Just building this stuff, showing people what I know, what I figured out, is just the funnest thing ever. And I love that you enjoy it. Thank you for saying thanks. And I'm so glad that you found it, that you got here. So anyway, what are we doing next? I think it's now time to talk about collaboration, Dioramo Lighting System. So I was contacted about a month ago about a new, because it's brand new, just started this year, lighting system out of North Carolina, and said, hey, I would like to send you some of my lights and have you evaluate them. Now, this is really, really neat. And this is part of my points that I wrote down. I really wanted to be careful. Like I said earlier, I have never had a sponsor. I've done a collaboration kind of with people, but I've never had a sponsor. And so it started with just that conversation. And I really wanted to have that conversation. It just wasn't email and transactional, right? I really wanted to understand the person and the people at the company. And so I had that call, and it was wonderful. That was really cool. So then we agreed, yeah, please send me some things. I didn't specify what, and Dioramo didn't say we should do this or you should do that. They didn't say you had to make a video. They didn't say you had to even talk about it. They were honestly, interested in my feedback of what I thought of the product. Man, this kind of thing really makes sense to me, because I want to go into it cautiously. And the person that I'm talking to also understands that. So they've done their homework too. They know that I'm not just going to jump at something. You know what I mean? In other words, before I was even contacted, I believe they understood who they were talking to. Really like that. The next thing I said was, yeah, please send me stuff. And then the stuff arrived. Now, I was in business. I was in marketing. I was in sales. I did these things. I was in manufacturing. I did all of these things, and I worked with some very, very high-end companies. And in my life in doing that, I also helped our marketing, and I helped our packaging, and because I worked for a startup company at one point. So everybody did everything, and it's really exciting and stuff. And you get to know how to market, how to package, how to not impress your customer, but give your customer a sense of comfort because they're doing everything right. Well, that's what I felt like. So here is just the box that came to me. Just the box. Wow, that's a nice box. So the packaging is nice. You know, you can buy a box, you can off the shelf it, you can do a lot of kind of stuff. Went to the expense of making a box. So I thought, oh, that's a nice outside. Then I open it up. Oh my gosh, they did the inside too. And there's a personal note to me. Happy model building. Everything. And when this is a term that I learned in sales and marketing stuff. Everything was touched. Everything was taken care of. Everything was thought through. And when you're doing a marketing campaign in business, you really need to have somebody standing by the side and saying, have you done this? Have you done that? What have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So when you say everything's been touched, that means that they have done that. They, at least in my experience. And so when I saw this, I'm like, wow, everything's been touched. Really wants to make the customer feel good, really wants that. So that made me feel good, not about the product, partially about the product, but about the company. Because remember, I said it's got to be part about the company too. You know, have they gone and done their job? Right. These answers are starting to roll in for me, and I'm thumbs up. So then I start looking at the products, and we had spoken about the products and we were talking about it. So, you know, that was a really important thing for me too. Understanding the product development, we talked about that. The quality assurance. So earlier on, before sales and all that kind of stuff, I worked in manufacturing. I'm around Seattle, so I worked for a coffee company. And I worked there for 5 years, and I started there in manufacturing. I was physically building the machines, big old 300-pound coffee machine. It was a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed that job. I moved up to service. I moved up to international technical liaison. I was flying all over the world teaching other people how to, like service companies and companies that would buy it to distribute it to restaurants, stuff like that. I would teach them how to troubleshoot it, how to repair it. I did this in Japan. My territory was really everywhere, but I did a lot of work in Japan, a lot of work in Australia, Guam, Singapore, Southeast Asia. Okay. Hong Kong. Did a lot of work around the US, Canada, Argentina, not a lot of European stuff, but when I was there, I did that. So I flew all around the world teaching people how to maintain electronic equipment. It also had water pressurization, so there was all kinds. It was AC and DC machines. So I had to do all this kind of thing. And in that, I had to teach people how to look and find problems, troubleshoot in a machine that was not working. Whatever the case may be with that machine, they had to repair it. Lots of these machines for years were in McDonald's, 7-Elevens, high-end restaurants, all over the world. Restaurant Marché, not big in the US, but huge around the world. They all had it. Mokapan in Australia. If you're from the Melbourne area, Mokapan is a huge coffee company, and they had our machines. So again, this is 25 or 30 years ago. But that experience allowed me to understand manufacturing, my own experience in manufacturing, but also teaching others, because when you teach, you learn immensely more about a subject because you have to relate it to other people. Now, I speak no other languages. I barely speak English well enough to communicate. I'm trying to be facetious there, but I don't honestly speak any other languages. I was in Japan. I'm in Hong Kong. And yes, the companies that I would go and would sponsor me to go there and work with their technicians, a lot of them spoke English or partially, but most of the technicians did not. So you learn to communicate in non-verbal ways and stuff like that. But that again teaches you to look at things at such a finite level. This connector, by example, you have to look at this connector in a finite level because there's about 5 different ways this can fail. And I have to teach people how to not make it fail or to troubleshoot it to see if it did fail, or if it has failed, fix it. If it hasn't failed, what failed in the line of that lighting up? There's power here, but it's not lighting up. Where do I look? So I have a fair amount of experience there. That's probably way overboard to tell you that, but I just wanted to make sure I did. So I have this experience, and I utilize that same experience from my manufacturing to heavily scrutinize these products. Okay. The reason is not so that I could sell you something. It's so that I didn't perjure my own name by saying it's a good product and it's not. And I'm happy to say it is good. I really did like it. And that is why I'm sponsoring it. So now I've accepted the collaboration and sponsorship with Dioramo because I'm very impressed with everything that they've done. Just, me, I tell you the truth. That's it. So now I want to show you how it works, even some of the things that I did in my own testing of it to make sure that I number one, I want to put it in my diorama. Number two, I'm thrilled to be sponsored by it. And also to say, I think you would like it too. So, and by the way, there is a discount code. I want to make sure that that's out there too. There's a discount code in the description that you can get a 5% discount. So that was also one of the criteria. It's not like and this wasn't a meeting on LA law or something like that. Sorry, that's aging myself. But it's not like, okay, you're going to have to do this. No, it was a really, really nice conversation. Hey, could we do this? Because I've never done this before, the sponsorship stuff. So I think we're both learning a little bit, but it was a very enjoyable conversation. So now I'm going to go to the top down. I got to turn this thing on just because that's how it is. And my camera doesn't like to stay going, but I'm going to show you the Dioramo stuff. And we're going to talk about it. And I'm going to show you kind of, how I worked with it. So this is it. Now, what I've got here, and I'm going to get this over here just so I can show you a little bit clearer. This is the power supply. And I'm going to start with the power supply because I just, with my last diorama, went to 12 volts. I have been doing 9 volts with all of my dioramas for the simple fact that I thought it would be better to go with 9 volts in case I didn't have any landline power. I could just go with a 9-volt battery. Well, it doesn't deliver enough power, quite honestly. So my last diorama, I went with 12 volts. Well, guess what? 12 volts. So I like that. That was one of the things. I also like that Dioramo, again, I mean, that's a Dioramo printed. It's just not off the shelf. This is Dioramo's product. So comes with that power supply. That power supply then powers their system. And I've got some things laid out here, and I'm going to try to explain it. The first thing here that we're showing you is a hub. And the hub takes power in here. So I just plug the power in there like that. Each of these modules comes with this. It attaches right there, but it's for pulling these connectors. Each of these also comes with screws. I thought that's awesome. And they're black screws, so they match the thing. And they actually fit in there really nice, the little chamfers, the countersinks that are in there. I mean, all of this stuff. That's what I mean by, everything's been touched. So these come with it. You can mount it. I went ahead and took one of these apart just because I wanted to see the screws are right there. A couple of cool things. And Diorama told me this when we were talking about it. Went and spent a lot of engineering time making sure that these enclosures, fit carefully. Even without the screws, it'll snap together and fit together nicely. I was just really impressed. The kind of plastic, it's strong, but it's not brittle. It's got some flex to it, so I'm not going to break this little tool. Loved all of that. So what this hub does is I take power in here, and then I've got outputs here and here on the top and the bottom. There's an expansion cable here, or expansion port here, and then a switch port here. So I have in here in the switch port just a 3 connector bypass. And what that does is, and you don't have to have it to put it in, but what that does is that makes it always on. Okay. Now, if I want to put a light in this, I'm going to take a light right here. I'm going to place a light in there, and I can put it in any one. I don't have to do them in line, but I'm going to put it in one. And then if I plug this in, sorry, my big old head's in the way, I got a light. So that's just as simple as it is. Now, the neat thing about it is I have the ability to expand this. I have the ability to do other things with it because everything is modular. Now, we're going to take a second. Remember me and modularity? That's a huge thing. When I saw the modular part of it, I'm like, that's perfect, because I build in a modular fashion so that when I'm building my diorama and I want to do something or possibly even later repair something, I can still take it apart. And there are things that I never glue together. I can still take this fascia off the front of this diorama, and everything in here is accessible. I can get to every light, I can get to every component, and I can replace them if need be. So I like that. That's from my manufacturing, right? Well, these are also modular components. So when I've got this module in place, and if I want to expand it, just because I've got that expansion cable port right there, I got to get my expansion cable. Sorry. It sounded like I was prepared for a minute ago. So I can just take my expansion cable and I can go right in here, plug it right in, and then I can go to another module. This is a blinker, a flip-flop flasher. I can go right in there, and look at that. I got lighting. Now, it's not blinking right now because it's got a dial, and I can set the blink to, I don't know what the range is, but it's really long. I thought this was just constantly on. No, that's blink, and it'll blink. See? So if I dial this down, it'll get faster, 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 blah, blah, blah. These blink at the same time. This one blinks opposing. So it's really nice. Now, that's all fine and well, but now what if I do want to turn on this light? Well, here's kind of cool. I'm going to unplug this. I don't know that I have to, but I'm gonna. And here I have a switch. Now, the other thing that's really important that I want to talk about, I have been doing my own lighting since I started. I saw Luke Towan do lighting, L Towan do lighting years ago. And it seems so easy, I had to do it. And so over time, 5 years now, I have built up a bunch of tools, a bunch of parts, a bunch of components, wire and shrink wrap. And man, a lot of stuff. So my initial thoughts on going with a lighting system way back in the day when I was first thinking about it was, I don't want to do it. It's expensive. First off, just expensive. Well, that's ridiculous because I've spent well more than I would have if I would have bought a lighting system. So I considered that, right? But the other thing is I'm a little bit different because I did want to learn to do my lighting. Okay. There was an alternate method to me not buying a pre-built system, somewhat like Dioramo. I wanted to learn. Well, now that I've learned it, it's not that I have better knowledge, I just have more. Now I'm like, yeah, there's things that I want to do with it, okay, where I'm still going to wire my stuff. But now I'm thinking, man, I'm going to use a lighting system because it is 100% easier. There have been times when I'm calculating my own resistors, I'm calculating my length, because the length of the wire that you're using has, that does work against you. The longer the wire, you have what is called voltage drop. So I can't just have a 100-foot long wire and get the same voltage at the other end, there's a voltage drop. So you have to calculate all that kind of stuff in. Well, I know how to do that rudimentarily. I can almost do it. But the diorama has done it. I don't have to worry that my light may fail in the future. Now, all lights fail, sure. But the point is, it's not because of something I did. And I'm not all that certain on some of my other ones. And the reason is this. I went at all this expense and buying stuff. And at one point, I bought these resistors that I thought, hey, this is a great deal because it's in bulk. Those resistors, I have lights in my last diorama that I use those resistors on, and those lights are dimming. And I think the reason they're dimming, I don't know, but you know, if heat builds up in a resistor, it can fail. So the point is, by allowing somebody else that knows what they're doing to do those calculations for me, I'm a lot happier going this route now that I know, because I know how hard it is to do. I know what it takes to put lighting in and build lighting and do that kind of stuff. I do know. As a matter of fact, I brought this up here for a very specific reason. This is my Wolfenstein diorama. It is an award winner. Thank you very much. And I just wanted to show you something. So there's got lights all through here. And I want to show you the back side of it because I can unplug it here and I can take this panel off. And that is the wiring for Wolfenstein. I can even zoom in. I'm telling you, it was kind of a nightmare to get this wired in. And each one of those, I can bring this back out now. Each one of those wires in there goes to either 1 or 3 lights. Because in certain instances, I do a 3 light fixture and so I can wire to that. So I've done a lot of this stuff. And when I do something like that, I would do it in stages. You know, I maybe I start down here, these 2 levels right here, that's 2 pieces of 2-inch thick pink foam. Those 2 levels were one pass at my lighting, if you will. And I had to do each level with that in mind. So 3 times during the build, I put everything away because it, you know, to bring all this equipment out. And I had it set out yesterday. I was going to have it out here and I was like, man, it's just too much. Because when I have all my electrical out, it fills from this to that corner. It's just all my electrical stuff. And it has to be there because of the work that I do. Well, I didn't have to do any of that. Yesterday, I put out a video and I said, hey, I'm going to light this thing in one day. And when I was done with that and I started diving in, no, I'm going to light this thing in an hour. I mean, it's just, I stopped because I was going to light it in an hour. I'm just like, what's there to film? There's nothing to film. It's just you. I mean, literally, you take these lights, they've got sticky backs on them, you peel it off and you stick it there and it's done. So it becomes a point of finding out where you want your lighting, which we're going to do next, placing the lighting and hiding wires, and then finding where you're going to have your modules and stuff like that. So we're going to look at more of the modules. We're going to look at the switches. I know I came over here and I had to talk about modularity, but I just want you to know where this is going. I think it's going to be pretty fun, but it's the amount of work that I didn't have to do to get to this point, which is kind of blowing my mind a little bit. So I really love that about it. Hey, Sleazen is here. I have to say hello. Hey, Sleazen, how's it going? We're talking about lighting and we're talking about Dioramo lighting. And by the way, when I was talking to Dioramo the other day, they are doing international shipments. So we're shipping to Australia. Man, I'm not associated with them. They're just a sponsor. But my point is he is shipping and and I've had just such a wonderful time talking and working and using this stuff that I'm probably a little bit overexcited about it maybe. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this, and I do want to show you how to set the circuit up because it's real simple, and I want to have you to have a good grasp of it. So what I was going to do here is I unplugged it because I want to put a switch in. So what I do is I take my puller, and one of the tests that I did that you do in quality assurance is you will take the wires, and don't do this. It's really, it's not designed to do this way. But in QC, what you do is you will just take these wires and pull. And there's different types of pull. There's the yank, something falls off that simulates that. There's a slow pull and stuff like that. I just did a slow pull. But the point is these aren't supposed to come up just by hand. You're not supposed to do that. You can use this, and you should, because it does work very, very well. Just slips over there. And it works if you've got a bunch of them in here. It does go between them. So there's no issues with it. So I've got my expansion in there. I've got that place for a switch. I'm going to plug this switch in. And I really like this switch, by the way. That's why I want to show you this one. So I'm going to plug this back in. So now I have a switch in line to this. But that's the expansion. So watch what happens when I turn this off. So that turns this off. This switch is connected to this, not that. That has its own place for a switch. See that? So I like that. I think that's pretty good. I mean, it makes sense electrically as well, but the point is that's a really nice way to have it. So I can have a switch here, and in this switch in particular, I'm going to do this. As a matter of fact, I'll just take this blinker off. It's a dual. And that's the other thing. This little tool is really nice. It's got a 2-pin here, and it says XH2. And this one has a 3-pin, so it's a dual tool. It might do other stuff. I don't know. I might have to ask him. But what I want to do is this. I want to show you what happens with this. See this little, it's called a pigtail. That little pigtail right there, when I plug that in there and you see it's off right now, well, when I turn it on, look at that. So I've got an on indicator, or I've got a power indicator right off of the switch. That's great. So if you have this like mounted and you want to have a power indicator to know if something's on, you can have a power indicator, or you can just have this go on to something else. It could be a sign. It could be whatever you want, but I just like that design. That's a really clever way to do your light switch. So you can get some light switches that have that integrated, but these are, then you're locked in. You can't do anything with it. So that is the basics of the system. Now, what I have set up, and I'm going to bring this down here so you can see it, is I've got a dimmer module. And that's the neat thing, is there's all these different modules, and they're all the same design. So you can just plug and play, right? And so what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to take all this jazz apart, and I'm just going to use the dimmer module. I'm going to go ahead and plug this in. And then I made, this is something that I do a lot. I made 2 little placement probes. And what that is I'll take, let me move down here so you can see better. I'll take, these are just dental rubber bands, you know, the little tiny rubber bands you get for like if you have braces. So I've got some little tiny dental rubber bands, and these are just little tiny long sticks, and I've rubber banded 2 lights. They're different lights to the ends of them. So when these are plugged in, what I can then do is figure out where I want my lights inside the diorama, because they're on the end of these sticks. Now, I just because of cameras and stuff like that, I can't really show you today, but the video that comes out tomorrow, that I really go into this process. So you see these, they're lit up. They're, you know, I can still brighten them or I can dim them, which is really nice because I can figure out what kind of light I want in and where. So that's, and that's something that I've done for a number of years. I create that, and I have my own that I do off a 9-volt battery too. But it's really a nice way to place lighting inside of a space that you can't get in, you know, it's too small. But I'm taking these probes, I'm putting them in there, you know, they're at ceiling level, or sometimes I'll put them on the wall to give light across, you know, sweeping across, you know, whatever's inside that area. So that's how I do my light placement. I'll place those in there. I can use them both. I do different colors so I can see which color is going to work. On this diorama, Dioramo sent me quite a bit of lights. I'm going to talk about the different lights here in a second too, because I think that's really cool, because there's some lights that are small enough that I can make fixtures for. I can use the light and put in my own fixture. So anyway, I place those in there, find where I'm going to put my lights, and then I come out and then I bury my lights in it. So now we're going to look, what did I say we're going to talk about next? Well, what I want to talk about next is I lost my train of thought, but I do still want to talk to you about, well, I had a great idea and I just totally blew my mind. I have no idea where I was going. Let me see. Shane, give me an idea, somebody. Give me an idea. Shane, have you ever done a Transformers diorama? No, but I like that idea. Got a jet, Bill. I'll check the repeat. Hopefully have a wonderful day. Thank you very much. That's really, really cool, Shane. And we'll see you. Shane's at work. What was I going to say? I was going to say something really interesting, and I can't remember. Well, yeah, I don't know. I completely lost that train of thought. So let's just kind of stick back to what I was going after. After I show you, or tomorrow when I show you this, you'll have a good idea as to what you have to do to place your lights. But then there's another factor that I didn't think about yesterday when I thought I was gonna do lights, and so that's why I didn't place them. So I could get this off here to show you. And that is, don't just have a flat ceiling. Okay, so this morning, well, it was yesterday when I started this part. Yesterday, I was all excited to get lights in here. And when I go in here, I forgot that I didn't do my ceiling. And by doing the ceiling, what I mean is I went in here and I used my rotary tool, my Fordham, and I carved out the ceiling. And why that's important is when I put lights in, there are different lights that I want to put in. Some lights I want to see in a fixture. And that's where I was going. I remembered what I was trying to talk about. And these are really helpful for that, to see where maybe a fixture would go. But sometimes what you want to do is you just want light. It's kind of like, you're watching a movie and the movie's in this totally dark place and there's light. And you're like, where's that light coming from? Well, that's kind of what I have to do. I just need to have light in there so you can see. But I want other light to accent. Remember, I talked about that a while back about having different lights. Sometimes it's just illuminating. That's what I'm talking about now. But other times it's for an effect. So right now, and doing this ceiling, it's just for illuminating. So when I do this to my ceiling, it's for the purpose of, if you should look up, it doesn't look like a piece of foam. But also, I'm going to be sinking kind of like a can light. If you understand lighting in your ceiling, it's a can light. It's pushed up into the ceiling. And how I do that, and this will also be on the video tomorrow that I'm producing, is I burn a hole in it, because drilling doesn't work very well in foam. It makes the hole much bigger than you want. So I burn a hole into the foam from the side, and then I burn to that hole, opening up another hole. So it's kind of a hole and then a hole. And that's how I do my lighting. It's recessed. When you're looking at like this, you can't see it. The light just shines down. There's no, you can make it a little bit more conical, to get a wider spread of the light and stuff like that. But I typically try to use that almost like an effect light, where it's a spotlight, but just overall. I'm not explaining it very well, I don't think, but it's a really neat process. And that's part of what's going to be in the video tomorrow. I can't do it here today because it's a two-hand job, but it's basically, I burn into this just like you use a hot wire, but I'm using a probe and I'm going in from the side. So that's another thing that you need to consider when doing your lighting. And we can look back here for that. Where's all that wiring going to go? What am I going to do with this stuff when it's in there? I don't want to see the wires. In this diorama, it's particularly important because it's medieval. in this diorama, I can actually show some wires. It's 1941, or I think it was 44, something like that. So no, yeah, it was 1941 because our first actions were in 41, 42 in World War II. So yeah, so it was in 41. They had lighting, they had stuff. You can use that to hide your wiring. In this, I got no chance for that. So I've got to bury it. I've got to make it look natural. And that's just another consideration in doing it. The nice thing about this kind of lighting, because it's already got resistors, it's already wired, it's already got he uses silicone kind of insulation on the wire, which I love. And it's I believe it's woven wire. I'll double check that. But that goes in these little places that I got to fish this wire very, very well. So I guess at the end of the day, I'm still evaluating, but I made the decision to go forward because all of those little things just kind of hit right for me. All of the little things that I would consider in putting this in my diorama, the modularity, the company, how well it's made, my own experience and understanding what it takes to wire a diorama, the decision to not do it previously because I thought it would be too expensive. It's not. Not having to, for years, go through the process of burning stuff out and learning and using more wire than I thought. It really is kind of a simple decision to say yes to the sponsorship, number one. To say yes, that I'm really excited to share it with other people because I do believe it's a great product. And number three, I do want to use it. I can't do a sponsorship on something that I'm not going to use. And not it's not like use because it's my only option. I'm going to use it because I want to use it. It does have a positive side to bringing this into my build. A very positive side. That whole thing where I was saying I can get this thing wired in like an hour. I don't exactly have the lights. That's why I didn't do it yesterday. And I had to do the thing like I was telling you. But because I did find I want different lights. But that's a really big thing for me. I wouldn't fret about electrical when it was time to go to electrical when building my diorama. I wouldn't really fret over it, but I would push it down the road a little bit because I know how disruptive it is. I knew the flow of me building would be interrupted by doing this. I would have to kind of pick it up again, but I knew if I didn't do it at this time, because there is a point in time in your diorama where it's time to do the lighting. Again, about the halfway point to the 3/4 point, something like that, or the 2/3 point, you really have to consider lighting. You may even do it earlier, but that's kind of the latest point you want to do it. If you don't do it, then you may end up trying to either modify your diorama to fit the lighting, or you may have to move the lighting. So when I'm I'm trying to say that I'm going to show this tomorrow, but I don't want to keep pushing that this is in this video tomorrow, but it is. The placement of that light, the placement of the article in the diorama, how you want to see it, just like we looked at earlier when I had all this stuff in. Here we go. I had this back up, against this back wall and how the light kind of shined on it and stuff like that. That's intentional. That's the kind of thing that you're doing with your lighting. That is what you want to get out of lighting in your diorama. You want it to bring elements forward that maybe wouldn't be recognized without that lighting. So though I'm talking about diorama, I'm really wanting you to also take from this the importance of where and how you put your lighting in, because that is absolutely an element to your story. It's an intentional element. So are shadows. I said this in one of my previous videos. Shadows are an intentional thing. A shadow off of an object makes that object bigger. It extends that object. Depending on where the light is, it can make it bigger. It can make it thinner. It can make it longer. The shadow enhances the thing that you're doing. So when I'm putting lights in, it's not just illuminated, it's not just accent, it's also casting shadows. It's also trying to get more out of the elements that you're adding to your diorama that previously existed before the lighting. And it's not just the lighting, it's the effect of the lighting that you're looking for. So lighting is a real big deal to me. And I really got into it because I also love, and I've talked about this before for those of you who've been here before, I really like to watch special features on movies. One of my primary, and I've watched it in numerous times, is Lord of the Rings. All of the Lord of the Rings, I've watched the special features for the Lord of the Rings more than the Lord of the Rings. Fact. The special features for it goes into the making of the Lord of the Rings, the every aspect of it, the writing, the building of the sets, the lighting, voice, act, everything. And I think the importance there is when you're trying to tell a story visually, go to the people that tell stories visually, movie makers. I'm trying to tell stories with my dioramas. It's not just a base to show off a vehicle, and I'm not belittling that whatsoever. That is exactly a great use for a display or a diorama. What I am saying is that is important, but what's important to me is telling a story with the diorama. And for that, I'm trying to utilize all of these different elements: lighting, shadow, placement, depth, heck, I want fog, I want to add more to it. But all of those elements go in to tell that story. It's not you've told your story by placing all your articles in the diorama and then you light it. It is integrating your lighting in with your story to properly show off what you've built and enhance the story so it becomes more visceral. It's more real to people. When Shane said, it looks like you just walk right in, I absolutely want that. I want you to feel that way because that's communicating an idea that is making you feel some way about the diorama instead of visually, hey, that looks neat. You get a feeling from it. That's a big deal. You're making a connection as an artist with someone viewing it. And that's a very, very fun thing. So where are we at? I showed live collaborations and sponsors I talked about. I think I'd like to show a little bit more on the diorama stuff because there is a lot more. And I hope I haven't missed anything. I want to show you these little tiny lights because I like building components for dioramas. And so this is something I want to show you. I'm going to flip this down here. I got to turn this camera on. I'm very sorry it went off. I've got this weird thing with my camera. It turns off after 20 minutes on its own. So this is one of the little tiny micro lights. And I want to show how this is packaged specifically. Because the other thing that I taught my guys when I'm teaching them how to, work electronics and stuff like that is you never, in a bundle like this, you never want to go in and do something like this and start cutting. You never want to go in with something like this and start cutting. It's not necessary. What happens is a lot of times you can go in and cut a wire. So and I've seen people bundle these in different ways, but what Dioramo has done here is they've put on some nice masking tape. So I can just go in there, I can pull this off, and I can take that off without damaging the wires, number one, which is highly important. There you go. And also, they're put together nice. That's a nice little package. Here, I'm taking this off because I want you to see how big this LED is. So there is our LED. And I believe that is a 0.1 millimeter LED. I am going to put it in here so you can see the light that comes off of it. And although this is a green one, that's a perfect size for like a vehicle or something like that. But look how much light, and I can dim it all the way down. I can bring it up. But that is perfect to put in a fixture. And I love making fixtures for my lights. And boy, see, there you go. I'm going back to that video this weekend, but it's all about fixtures. That's something I didn't want to lose in maybe going to somebody else's lighting package, somebody else's lighting system. I do like making fixtures. I think the fixture says something about the scene. When you're designing your living room or something like that, that lamp would be perfect there. Oh, of course it is, and that's the exact same thing that I'm doing in my diorama. So I build lamps, I build fixtures, I build hanging, I build sconces, I build all those kinds of things because how that light is presented is also nice to see, if you put in just the light, this was something that I faced early on. I didn't know what I was going to do for a fixture, but if you put in just a light, well, that's not going to work. You can hang it down there, but the light goes everywhere, and you look in the diorama and you get a sunspot because this light is just beaming you right in the eye. So the very first ones I made were out of pop cans, and they're just a little cone, and I'll show you how to make that in the video. But the point is, it doesn't take a lot. You don't have to go out and 3D print. You can. You don't have to go out and 3D print something. You could literally use a pop can, cut a circle out of it, and make a lampshade out of that. That is still my primary light that I want to use where it's proper. It's not modern enough here in this diorama, but that's the primary light that I want to use to just flood a room with light. It's just this industrial lampshade looking lampshade, and it does two things. It directs the light down. It keeps that sunspot action, because without the shade on this thing, it just shines everywhere, so you just got light bleeding everywhere, and you can't really, okay, so there's places where it's a good idea, but most of the time you're not controlling that light. That light is just there. That's not what you want. You want light there for a specific reason, and you can do that with just a simple shade. So I think that is about it. I kind of think I've run over everything that I would think of in this. I'm going to continue to do more videos about diorama. I've got this whole box of stuff. I've got another diorama, as a matter of fact, that I want to put some stuff in that I should be able to from this. That I haven't built yet. It's just I want to light the case. I've got this really cool medical type case I want to put lighting in. So for all these different functions, I'm really happy with it. And what I'll be doing is just showing you how I place it, how I put them in, how they go in this diorama in particular. And then if you have questions, just ask. I really like the system. There is that code I said about. You've got a 5% discount code in the description of the video. So please don't forget about that. And then go check it out. I really like that you can just go to their website, see exactly the kind of stuff that I'm seeing. It's very simple, very easy. Boom, you're in, you're out. So that's kind of all I had for today, folks. If anybody has any questions, I would love to answer them. Shane had to take off. Hey, the Affronted is here. Hello, Affronted. Are you planning on replacing the LEDs and the torches at the very bottom layer with the diorama system? No, but thank you very much. That was a great question. I think somebody else asked that, not today, but on previous, like online. No, the other thing that's cool, and I should have probably mentioned this, and I haven't dove into it yet, but there is the ability to go with an electrical dropout. I had to find this, but Dioramo has a module so I can take power directly out, not to one of their components, but to my component. So I can still use the Dioramo system for my custom-made lights that I've already got wired up and stuff like that. Now, I've not got resistors in there. Perfect. Because now I can figure out what resistor I need for a 12-volt system, which again is what I switched to last time in lieu of the 9-volt system that I was using before. So that's pretty neat. I like the fact that I can drop out power from it, because I do like to use Arduinos. I do like to use other things. I like to make my own, like, not just a fixture, but like the torch that I made. I loved making that. And I think it'll be really cool. All integrated. And not necessarily something that I had planned on from the front. I started this thing out and I had this whole idea of how I do it. I didn't have the general idea of what it's going to look like, but I knew I'm going to do this and I'm going to build that, blah, 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 blah. This came along and it's still, I can just integrate it right in. I think that's pretty cool. I really like it. And there's a lot more on their website to see. There's other modules. There's lots of stuff. So I haven't looked at the entire line yet. I just got a small sampling. So go take a look. I've got their website in the notes. And, I hope you enjoy looking at it. I liked it. It was a great site. So thank you, everybody. I do want to say thank you to my Patreon subscribers and my subs. I'm sorry, I got the wrong flingamajanger. That's the thing that I wanted. And I wanted to thank you very much, because the YouTube members and the Patreon folks have been so nice and so kind. And I speak to most of them every single day, and it's a really, really fun community. I didn't really think the community thing was like a big deal. There we go. I got the cut right. I didn't really expect that, but I have a wonderful time. I speak to folks all the time, every single day, about what I'm building, and they've got suggestions, and a lot of those suggestions go into the diorama, and that's a lot of fun. So thank you, everybody. Thanks, Greg, for coming on. Thanks, everybody that made it. Thanks, new folks, for coming in and contributing. I really appreciate it. If you are looking to get some of your things seen on my live stream, this is every single Friday. We've done it for over a year now. This is episode 86. So, we've been doing this for a good little bit. If you'd like to see some of your stuff up here, just send it to me. It's on my, we have to do it on my Discord, but you can go through my Patreon. So just go to my Patreon channel and you can join for free, or you can pay me. I like money. But you can do it for free, and then you can get your photos up there, and I'd love to share it. So thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I am going to be watching some football. I'm going to be doing some lighting, and I'm getting a video out tomorrow. I don't know if it'll be at 10. I'm probably not going to be at 10 a.m. It'll probably be a little bit later. So I'll probably do a short in the morning, because I got a lot of editing to do on this video. But I want to get that video out to you.